Welcome to Shadowroot Tales, a little corner of the internet for dark souls to be fed dark tales. I suggest you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't lose me in the endless void of online content. And if you happen to like this horrifying tale, leave a like to pay respects to the goblins of my mind. Tonight's story carries not only a thrill but a valuable life lesson. If you find yourself lost in the woods, listen to nature's warnings. Nature always knows best. Point Pleasure is one of those places that no one remembers anymore. Tucked away in a forgotten corner in the west. Not a single person was on the street as we made our way down the road to our new place. I was convinced that no one else lived here. That would explain why the rent was so cheap. The houses themselves resembled burnt marshmallows. They used to be white at one point, but had been airbrushed by a thick smog. We learned why soon enough. I wasn't far from home when I saw the aftermath of multiple fires in a row. Nothing but charred debris littered the brown plots of land. One lot in particular caught my attention. I slowed the car and put down the window. The ashy smell confirmed what I saw. The lot was still smouldering, as if it had only recently burned down. Grey plumes of smoke danced off the rubble, and orange embers reflected in the setting sun. That's not good. Winston stuck his wet nose between the front seats and sniffed the dense, smoky air. I closed the window and went on my way again. We didn't get very far before the car slowed down until it eventually started rolling backwards instead. "Oh, come on!" I put the car in park. Throwing open the door, I stepped out and popped open the hood. This piece of junk does this all the time. So I never took it as a warning. Winston jumped out and came over to help me. His nails clicked on the road, his tail slapped against his side, and his dog tag rattled. He's got to be the world's loudest dog. Upon looking in the hood, I saw the problem almost immediately. It would be hard to miss. What the? The battery was covered in black ash. "Winston, get the wrench." Winston rattled along and brought back the wrench I kept in the driver's side door. "Thanks, buddy." As soon as I pulled the battery out of place, a swarm of white and black insects jolted up and flew past my face. I didn't even have time to see what they were. "Ah! Forget it!" I threw the battery into the back seat. The sun was setting, and I just wanted to get home. "Come on, buddy." I grabbed our stuff from the trunk. Luckily, we didn't have many possessions. If anything, I thought we were about to gain from this town. I couldn't have been more wrong. This place takes everyone you have and leaves you hollow. I jumped back in fright as I turned around. A young woman was standing behind us now. She had a large white dog on a loose leash. All she did was stare at us. We were outsiders, but it still felt unwarranted. "Good evening." I waved. Looking down, I saw Winston standing there, frozen in fear. His tail was tucked safely between his legs. A shiver ran up my back. He usually loves meeting new dogs and their people. The woman didn't reply to me, and her dog didn't acknowledge us either. It stared ahead with two black bulging eyes. I blinked rapidly, convinced the smoky air was distorting my vision, because this woman and her dog seemed to blur around the edges, and the longer I stared, the more abnormal they looked. There was something like dust falling around them like confetti. I told myself it was ash in the air from the recent fire. We walked past them. Winston trailed close behind me with his ears up and pinned back. That was weird, but weird things happen all the time. I was able to rationalize with myself until Winston stopped suddenly and whipped back around towards the woman and her dog. I turned too, and what I saw was the same woman and the same dog, except now the dog looked grayer. And the longer I looked, the more the grey slowly consumed the whiteness of the dog's coat, until eventually I saw smoke blowing off its body and dancing up toward the darkening sky. Embers formed at the tips of its fur until they jumped from the dog to the woman. A gentle flame traveled up the leg of her pants. The moment it got to her cotton sweater, the flame flared up and consumed her and the dog entirely. That's when I woke up. My heart was racing as I sat up in bed and reached for my phone. The brightness of the screen nearly blinded me as the rest of the room was completely pitch black. It was 3 in the morning, as I expected. That's when these dreams always come to me. I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to go back to sleep. These dreams were nothing new. They always take place on the first day we arrive in town. The only new thing about them is the people. Once it was a man and his boy. Then it was an elderly couple. I even dreamed about a tall, fuzzy-looking animal with no mouth and red eyes. Every dream ended in the same way, with the people and animals burning into nothingness. The more I tried to sleep, the more conscious I became. It didn't help that the room was so cold. I tried to get back to sleep for 20 minutes. Then I heard a buzzing sound. At first, I thought it was my imagination. It was subtle at first, but became louder. I sat up and scrambled for the lamp, flicking it on. I looked around the room for a fly, but I didn't see one. What I saw was an empty dog bed in the corner. Winston? I moved to the edge of the bed and froze. Winston was standing in the doorway, frozen in the same way as he was in my dream. Tail down, ears back. He was scared of something. Winston? I started walking over to him. From behind me, I heard a new noise, like someone shaking a damp blanket in the breeze. I turned around just in time to see a shadow fly past the window. I couldn't make out what it was through the curtain, but it was massive. That was enough to send a shiver down my spine. It was also enough to send Winston darting out of the room. I ran after my dog and quickly found out why the house was so cold tonight. The front door was wide open, letting the wind flow in freely. Winston ran out the door without looking back at me. I stopped to shove my boots on before following him again. By the time I got outside, Winston was out of sight. "Winston, get back here!" I grabbed my flashlight before slamming the door shut and running out into the night. "Winston, come on!" I scanned the property with the flashlight. At first, I didn't see anything. But then, for half a second, I caught two glowing orbs in front of the tree line. I found it strange that Winston would go that far away. When we go for walks, he growls when we get too close to the bridge that leads to the woods. "You've got to be kidding me," I screamed as I jogged toward the woods. There was a wet crunch under my left foot as I stepped onto the bridge. When I shone the flashlight down, I found that I had stepped on a dead bird. The bird's blood was now smeared on the bottom of my shoe. That would be the least of my worries soon enough. I quickly shone the flashlight up and held my breath, trying my hardest not to vomit. Getting Winston back inside was my priority. Exhaling, I continued over the bridge towards the tree line. I couldn't see Winston's eyes reflecting in my light anymore. I went deeper into the trees, assuming he had gone to take cover under something. Insects chirped around me. Frogs croaked around my feet. In the distance, there was a lonely howl. If I had to guess, I would say it was a coyote. I wasn't thinking about what was out there. Winston was all I was thinking of. I'm not sure how long I was out there, but it was long enough for the flashlight to start flickering. I gave it a couple of hard smacks that seemed to restore its life. The bushes behind me started to rustle. "Winston?" I turned the light toward the bushes. I didn't see anything. The tree above me started to rustle instead. An owl hooted and bolted from its branch. A cluster of bats screeched to life and fled the hollow of the dead tree. A red fox jumped out of the bush and chased after a line of running mice. I pointed my light down to the ground and saw the frogs leap past me. Behind the frogs was a stampede of large, brown, long-legged spiders. Everything awake was fleeing. Except for me, because humans are undoubtedly the stupidest animals. I was completely alone. Not even a caterpillar rested on the leaves beneath my feet. Yet, I kept going, telling myself that the animals were afraid of me. "Winston," I called out. By now, my voice had grown weary, and my efforts felt pointless. But I was already out here, and I was already lost. If you're already lost, can you get more lost? I didn't think so. A fuzzy grey moth flew in front of my flashlight. I thought I was alone now, so it made me jump. It was almost cute, though, staring at me with its bulgy eyes. For a solid 30 seconds, I stared back at it. It felt like it was trying to tell me something. "Hello there." As soon as I addressed the moth, it flew away. I wasn't left alone for long, unfortunately. I had only made it a couple more paces before I heard movement behind me. "Winston?" I flashed the light around frantically. No matter which way I turned, the sound of movement was always behind me. The sound was quiet too. If I weren't on high alert, I might have missed it. I would have never thought it was Winston if I hadn't heard a bark from behind me. But again, the sound stayed behind me no matter how fast I spun around. "Please," I shouted into the forest. But the forest had no empathy for me. The barking continued, "Winston," I screamed, following it up with a loud whistle. "Come on, let's go home." Finally, the sound got closer. The sound of feet padding softly over the dirt, barely making a sound. Whatever was behind me couldn't have been my dog. I spun around and came face to face with the thing behind me. It was Winston. At least it looked like him at first, but the wrong ear was bent. He only had one tag instead of two, and his tail was neutral. It wasn't between his legs in fear, nor was it wagging happily to see me. "No," I whispered to myself. "You're not mine. Where'd you come from?" I knelt in front of the new dog and held out my hand. At this point, I was still blind to the signs. I hadn't noticed how deathly silent the forest had become, and I hadn't noticed the figure standing behind the tree. The strange dog let me get close enough to grab his tag. It was cold on the fingertips, and once I read the name, the chills spread throughout my whole body. Winston. The dog didn't move an inch. "That's a coincidence, but you're not the Winston I'm looking for. Who's looking for you, buddy?" I turned the tag over in hopes of finding a name or number. What I found instead were two simple words etched in bold. "Don't look." Like the stupid human I was, I immediately looked up. That's when I saw the figure standing half behind the tree. When it noticed me staring, it poked its head all the way out. Immediately, I was blinded by its red gaze. Even when I turned away, my eyes continued to burn, my vision stayed blurry. My heart thumped against my ribcage. I needed to get out, fast. I knew I had to run, yet I couldn't seem to get myself to move. All I could do was think, what is that thing? It's nothing like anything I've ever seen before. Through my blurred vision, I saw something dart ahead of me from behind a log. I didn't need to see it to know it was my Winston. The familiar jingling of his dog tags snapped me back to my senses. I wasted no time bolting after him. He would lead me out of the forest. No matter how many times I tripped or stumbled, I didn't stop chasing him. We exited the forest, and I paused to catch my breath. My hands and knees were stinging from all the falls I took, but at least I could see the small glow of my porch light now. I pointed the flashlight down at my hand as I continued walking towards the bridge. The damage was worse than I thought. My palm was full of splinters and blood. I yanked one splinter out before noticing the weird pattern. They weren't stuck in my hand at random. The splinters were arranged so that my blood ran in just the right way to spell out stop in my palm. I was convinced I was just seeing things. I walked faster towards my house. Winston came to an abrupt stop in front of the bridge. I groaned. This is not the time to be afraid of the bridge again. I scolded Winston, snapping my fingers at him. "Come on." A sound caught our attention. We both looked back towards the trees. The sound of someone shaking a wet sheet was back. I saw a red glow flying through the trees, coming in our direction. Its body was too dark to see at night, yet I knew it was that thing from behind the tree. Its body thumped loudly into the trees. Some smaller trees cracked and fell from its force. The thing was much larger than I imagined. "Run," I shouted, running toward the bridge. Winston barked at me, grabbing my jacket. He yanked me back, begging me not to set foot on the bridge. I should have listened. "Let go!" I pulled my jacket out of his jaws and ran at full speed across the bridge. Karma caught up with me swiftly. The bridge collapsed underneath me when I was only halfway over, dropping me into the deepest part of the river. You expect a river in the middle of an October night to be cold, but this one was eerily warm. The more I thrashed around to find my way out, the more the river heated up, until I felt like I was boiling alive in a large stew pot. Winston barked wildly, coming around to the riverbank. He bared his teeth and growled at the river in a way I've never heard from him before. No matter how much I screamed for help, I didn't get it. The last thing I saw was Winston running away from me as my body gave in to the intense heat. My head fell forward, my nose, ears, and mouth filled with water that felt like molten lava. The last thing I smelled was smoke. The last thing I tasted was blood rising in my throat. The last thing I heard was the flapping wings of whatever that thing was. The last thing I felt was my body going numb. And just like that, our story has come to an end. Are you not satisfied? I suppose that can't be helped. Humans are so stupidly curious. I have a friend by the name of Alex Mercer who might be able to quench your thirst for more. Of course, you'll have to come back next time. Goodbye, good night, and don't turn off the lights, though you may attract moths.